Hello, we are back with our third video. This one will be a little more technical. We're going to be talking about how to align student responses to the ECR prompt and provide some hacks for our planning. So, a critical first step in the process of having a successful ECR response is to ATQA. If you've ever done any SAT tutoring, you've heard this before. It stands for answering the question asked. Now, we saw last spring when TEA first started using automated scoring engines or AI to score essays, that we had a lot more zeros. And that's because this ASE or automated scoring engine, when it recognized a student response that wasn't in line with the Fed responses that the TEA had provided it that did answer the question directly, it would just give it a zero. And this was a shift because we were used to humans scoring our students' essays, and our students were always given some points, right? Something for writing something. But we saw that even a student who had written several paragraphs, if they weren't answering the question asked, or if they weren't including some of their own writing and not just taking from the passage, they got a zero. So that was a heartbreaker. We need to learn from that and make sure that we're helping our students answer the question asked. So first off, here is the unpacking prompt and planning graphic organizer that we provided for the informational essay prompts, argumentative, and letters or correspondence prompts. We don't expect students to remake this on STAR Day. We do want students to have this habit of mind as they go in and evaluate a prompt. So what we recommend is we provide this graphical organizer throughout the school year and then help them transition into where they just have that sheet of paper. We don't want to overdo it. We want to make sure that students get the most efficient way into that ECR. Some habits of mind steps, though. We want them to be looking at a brand new passage and be thinking first off about the genre of the passage. This is important because if they are accessing that this is a poem or this is argumentative text, then they know to be looking for the genre characteristics that follow. And that helps them be an active reader instead of a passive reader, and they'll be able to comprehend more. Once they understand what genre they're looking at, then we want them to be thinking about that prompt. So they'll zero in into the statement in the middle here. This is the specific prompt. They'll figure out from this prompt whether they're being asked to explain, argue, or write a letter. They're going to be looking for specific key words that help them understand this is a passage about maybe many different subtopics, but what specifically am I being asked to write about? And then we make sure that they're thinking about the type of essay they need to write. Is it a letter that needs the salutation and the greeting? Or is it an argumentative for eighth and English 1 and 2 that needs a counter argument? That kind of thing. We want them to know what kind of structure they're writing into. Last and very essential is be looking at the vocabulary and looking up any unfamiliar words. You see this word here, revelation. That obviously stumped a lot of our English 1 students last year. So we need to make sure that before they even begin reading, let's make sure we understand all the components of the prompt, because that will just set us up for success when we're writing that ECR. So beginning to write and plan for this ECR. There's the inductive model that we've shown in professional development, and there's the deductive model. Both are kind of ways of thinking, and humans will fall into any bucket just depending on what the task is in front of them. They might be a more of an inductive person where they need to sift through evidence to figure out what is the main idea, what is the message, or what is the answer to the question being asked for ECR, right? Versus a kind of deductive person who thinks big picture first, could read a passage quickly and understand exactly what the theme or the claim is. For our developing readers and writers, we've learned that sharing the inductive model lowers the temperature, right? And makes them feel less anxious about needing to have the correct answer automatically. So with the inductive model, we do that prompt breakdown that we just talked about. And then we ask them to read the passage looking for potential relevant textual evidence, right? We're just lowering the temperature. Once they've found some potential pieces of evidence, they can look at patterns within that subset of text evidence and then begin to write a thesis that answers the prompt. This lets students know that they have some time, they have some thinking time. And then if we're thinking about taking the STAR test, it could be that they looked at the prompt, then read the passage, highlighted evidence, answered some multiple choice items, some new item type questions. Those questions will often give lots of clues as to what this text is about. So if we have a developing reader who's just really trying to like get as much information from the text as possible, but not understanding every single sentence, this model kind of like lets them get what they can, hunt and gather, and still be able to produce some kind of ECR. Both, again, are on the table for our students. I invite them to be active learners and figure out which one works best for them. So definitely show them both so they know both ways in, and definitely give them multiple opportunities with this inductive model so they can see how it can really help make sure that they answer the question that's asked. So again, some test taking strategies I'm kind of recapping here. Thinking about the day of STAR, ask them to, when they get to a new passage, look and see, is this an ECR passage? Is there an SER question associated with this passage? Ask them to jot those things down on their blank sheet of paper and do that kind of unpacking, looking up words they're not familiar with, making sure they know exactly what is being asked of them. And we can practice this in instruction up to STAR too. Then they can read those texts with the prompts in mind. And further down in that template that I was showing you, we've got this 4 square of textual evidence. Having them record it over here as opposed to just keeping it in the passage helps them have less to read. It's just more white space and lets them concentrate on the evaluation of these 4 pieces of textual evidence, which 2, and only 2 really is what we need when we looked at those 6s, will work best to support a response to the prompt. So we would advocate that students on STAR Day make a 4 square like this on their blank sheet of paper and jot down lines of evidence that could potentially answer the prompt. Then students, when they're ready to write that ECR, they would select the best 2 pieces of evidence that could answer the prompt. So if we're thinking about this example from, excuse me for going back and forth so much, from English 1, which pieces of evidence talked about the revelation that Miss McGill has had and the reaction maybe that Mr. Mifflin had to her revelation? Just which ones really seem to zone in on that and say something about their importance or significance. If I've got that going on, then I can lean on the language of the prompt and use that to answer my question. We found when we were analyzing the released STAR essays from our district students from last year, those students who used the restate and answer strategy were way more likely to stay on topic for the duration of their ECR and answer the question asked because the purpose was right there from the words of the prompt. So all of these things together will ensure that your students are answering the question asked. Okay, so again, to wrap it up, share both the inductive and deductive models of getting into planning for the ECR, but definitely share that the inductive reasoning model can really support students not having too much test anxiety on test day. We want to provide lots of opportunities for cold reads on their own with the prompt in mind. And so important is that we model this type of thinking in front of students. Asking students to find some evidence that matches without showing them what that might look like is assigning. And we need to show students the thinking, the grappling, the wait a minute, I forgot what the prompt was even asking me. Let me go back and reread this. I'm reading this paragraph. Does any evidence potentially answer this prompt? No, not really. I'm going to go on to the next one. It's that pecking and hunting that we need to showcase for our students. So you can do this multiple ways. You can do the modeling with a second prompt that the kids are not using on their own, or you can use the same prompt, but maybe just find the first 2 pieces of evidence and then let the students read through the rest of the passage to find the 3rd or 4th. Regardless, some way, somehow, make sure that modeling and searching and evaluating text evidence is part of your instruction. Okay, that's it. This was a little bit of a longer video. Thank you for hanging in with us, and we hope y'all have a great spring. Thanks.